And we'll begin with the opening of the word. An invocation from the Psalms. You have heard the longing of the meek, O Lord. You will strengthen their hearts and turn your ear to their heart's desire. So we'll begin our worship this morning with singing hymn number 210, which I will share for you now. Thank you, Jean. So we will now say together our responsive reading, followed by our affirmation of worship. And I will share both of those for you now. So our reading comes from Psalm 36. Your love, O Lord, reaches to the heavens, your faithfulness to the skies. Your justice is like the mountains in their splendor, your judgments like the great deep. Whether human or animal, Yahweh, you keep us all in your care. How precious is your love. Whether creatures of heaven or children of earth, we all find refuge in the shadow of your wings. We feast on the bounty of your estate and drink from the stream of your delights. In you is the wellspring of life, and in your light we become enlightened. Prolong your love for those who know you, and your justice for upright hearts. Amen. And now let us say together our affirmation of worship. We worship God, our loving Lord, who made us, who taught us in the Bible that all people are God's children and that we should love God and each other. When people turned away from God, he loved us enough to be born in our world as a baby. He grew up and lived the life he wants us to live. Risen now, he is still with us, our Lord and our God, helping us to grow more like him. This is why we know him as our Savior. We are his disciples when we love him and show our love for him by being kind and helpful to one another. And so now, friends, it is time to pray. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. Holy and ever-living God, by your power we are created, and by your love we are redeemed. Guide and strengthen us by your Spirit, that we may give ourselves to your service and live each day in love to one another and you. O Lord, our heavenly parent, teach us, we pray, to worship you with our whole heart. Help us to cast out all selfishness, that we may truly love you as the source of life. All fear, that we may wholly trust you as our strength and salvation, and all pride, that we may humbly bow before you as the giver of every blessing. So let us come to your altar, O God, our exceeding joy, and let us praise you, who alone is our salvation. And our God, as we sit here on the eve of Martin Luther King Day, having seen white supremacist violence at our nation's capital, and knowing that there is the potential for more in the coming weeks, let us dedicate ourselves even more strongly to King's vision of the beloved community. Our loving God, be with us, our nation, and our world, so that truth might be spoken and believed, and that compassion might be practiced and valued. Give us the courage to embody your beloved community in all that we do. Amen. And so now we will sing together again, hymn number 5, which I will share for you now. Thank you, Jean. So our first reading for today comes from the book of First Chronicles, chapter 29, verses 10 through 18. David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, "Praise be to you, Lord, the God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor, for everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. Wealth and honor come from you. You are the ruler of all things. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and give strength to all. Now, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from our hand. We are foreigners and strangers in your sight, as were all our ancestors. Our days on earth are like a shadow without hope. Lord our God, all this abundance that we have provided for building you a temple for your holy name comes from your hand, and all of it belongs to you. I know, my God, that you test the heart and are pleased with integrity. All these things I have given willingly and with honest intent. And now I have seen with joy how willingly your people who are here have given to you. Lord, the God of our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, keep these desires and thoughts in the hearts of your people forever, and keep their hearts loyal to you." And from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. One day, Jesus was praying in a certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Lord, teach us to pray, just as John taught his disciples." He said to them, "When you pray, say, 'Father, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Give us each our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, for we also forgive everyone who sins against us. And lead us not into temptation.'" May God bless the hearing and the living of this word. And further from the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg, Divine Providence number 58. The reason divine providence focuses on what is infinite and eternal, particularly in its intent to save the human race, is that the goal of divine providence is a heaven from the human race. And since this is the goal, it follows that the main focus of divine providence is reforming and regenerating us, that is, saving us, since heaven is made up of people who have been reformed and regenerated. Since regenerating us is a matter of uniting what is good and what is true, or love and wisdom within us, the way they are united in divinity that emanates from the Lord, divine providence focuses primarily on this in its intent to save the human race. The image of the infinite and the eternal one can be found in us only in the marriage of what is good and what is true. So, my friends, welcome to this sermon series in which we examine a prayer that we have likely said many hundreds of times, the Lord's Prayer. And it is called thus because it is based upon two passages in the Gospels where Jesus' disciples ask him how they should pray, and he gives them a model. The Lord's Prayer, as we know it, contains themes of holiness, God's will, God's kingdom, God's provision for us, of forgiveness and indebtedness, and temptation. Additionally, a doxology was added to the end in the early days of the Christian church, most likely based on our reading from First Chronicles, a reminder of whence comes all power and glory. And to this day, we find that some Christian practices include this doxology and some do not. Today, we will focus on the beginning phrases. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. So the prayer starts out by using a metaphor that speaks of intimate relationship. We do not just say Father, but our Father. It is interesting to note that in the Gospel of Mark, when Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane in his most challenging moments, he qualifies the use of the word Father with the Aramaic term Abba, which is best understood by us now as Papa, a word not used to indicate fatherhood in a general detached sense, but a word used in everyday familial contexts. So whatever word that we use for our own fathers, that is the word that would express the closeness with which we are addressing God in this prayer. Next, we speak of hallowing. Now, this is a kind of archaic word to us now, but it means to make holy or to honor with holiness. And specifically, we hallow or make holy the name of God. Now, on the surface, this might seem like a simple matter of external praise, but Swedenborg indicates that in the Bible, the word name represents the essential nature of something, its entire character or essential being. Now, to illustrate this concept, I want to tell you about the very first thing that I ever bought as a child with my own money. It was a homemade stuffed seal at a flea market. And I actually have it with me today. Yes, I did bring it with me as a grown adult from Australia to the US. This is my stuffy. And I really loved this stuffy when I first bought it. And can you guess what I called it? Seal. Not very original, I know, but when I think back to that time and about why I didn't choose a different name, I think it is because I loved my seal for exactly what it was. Now, this would have been in the early 80s, so the variety of available toys pales in comparison to today. And basically, I was in a landscape of mostly teddy bears and dolls, and so I had never seen a stuffy quite like it. And so I didn't see any reason to name it anything other than what it actually was, because I loved seals and I loved this stuffy because it was a seal. I called it the name that best reflected its essential character, which was its most valuable trait to me. And thus, in a similar way, when we invoke and hallow God's name, we do not simply hallow the word that we call God, but rather the whole of God's being that we are using that word to signify. And sometimes that word might be Father or Lord or God or Creator or something else. But regardless of the actual word, when we hallow God's name, we are lifting up and honoring the whole of what God stands for, the whole of God's intent, mission, and providence. And as we heard in our Swedenborg reading, God's intent is to save the whole human race, no exceptions. Next, we begin to speak of how we would like God's presence to be known by us and by the world. And this prayer, much like much of the Bible, uses a royal metaphor to express this. We ask that God's kingdom might come. Essentially, that God's reign might be extended from heaven onto the earth. The assumption embedded here is that heaven is a realm, or a vision even, where God's intent comes to pass more completely than on earth. And how are we to understand what it means for God's kingdom to come to earth? It might help us to understand how that metaphor is employed in the gospel at large. Most of the time, it is done in a kind of subversive way, in that it co-opts that familiar royal language, but then reframes what such a reign would be, reframes what such a kingdom would look like, and contrasts it with what we know of earthly kings and earthly kingdoms. And if we might otherwise describe kingdoms in terms of power and strength and authority and dominance, The Bible describes God's kingdom as a place where the least will be first, belonging to people who are poor in spirit or who are like little children. He compares it to a party to which everyone is invited, or a seed sown in a field, yeast leavening bread, a tiny, tiny mustard seed, a treasure hidden in a field for which we would give everything we own. And because of the way that God's kingdom is actually described in the Bible, many preachers now slightly change the word to kingdom, K-I-N-D-O-M, to better reflect its true nature of kinship, one in which relationship, equity, respect, and worthiness are paramount. And finally, as an extension of the notion of bringing God's kingdom to earth, we ask in the prayer that God's will be done. Inherent in this request is the idea that our will must be surrendered to God's will. And insofar as prayers are calling forth what might not yet be, we pray that even as our own will remains primary before our eyes, and we are human after all, it cannot be otherwise, that we might remember that God's will ultimately has a broader view. In essence, we surrender our view to God's view and practice the discipline of putting our will into eternal perspective. Jesus himself models this prayer once again in Gethsemane as he countenanced the ultimate sacrifice of his own will and his own life, saying, Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. And while we will generally, thankfully, not be facing Jesus' particular gauntlet in our own lives, we recognize that the dynamic itself plays out in smaller ways over and over. I'm sure that we will find our own will and our own desires thwarted time and time again in this life. And the purpose of our submission to God's will in the prayer is not to make us inherently suspicious of our own will in every circumstance. It is not that we are to become emotional martyrs, but rather to submit to the discipline of curiosity, the discipline of holding our own will lightly enough that when it does need reevaluating, we are open to doing it. This is how regeneration happens. This is what salvation actually is. There is such a powerful progression within these initial lines of the prayer. We first proclaim as holy not only God's being, but God's intent and providence. And in the hallowing of God's name, we declare our allegiance to God's intent and our belief in God's trustworthiness. This then leads us to ask that God's vision, what we call God's kingdom, might become manifest in our world. We see the value of the kingdom and wish for it to be the way of things. But even as these opening lines speak mostly of God, they begin to mark out our responsibility as well. Many upcoming parts of the prayer, which we will explore in coming weeks, explicitly lay out important ways that we can help the kingdom come through faithfulness, forgiveness, and courage. But these all start in these early sentences with the surrender of our own will. Many times our desires will be contrary to the coming of God's kingdom. And in our prayer, we make the essential recognition and commitment that when our will is contrary to the kingdom, may God's will be primary. And the purpose of prayer in general is to center us in our relationship with God. As we navigate our own lives, as we navigate an increasingly difficult time with both the pandemic and with politics, how might this prayer be of help to us? Of course, everyone will have their own individual responses, but here is what I see. that God remains present with us and as God ever was. God's being, intent, and vision are steadfast and available. And when we lift them up as holy, we place them at the center of our lives, and they become our compass and our guide. When we have questions about the meaning of things, we have something fundamental to turn to. Then, when we declare that God's kingdom might come, we issue an invitation to our own selves to actively step into the birthing of that vision, to partner with what God is already doing. We have an answer to the question, what should we do? And we have a hope of God's kingdom to look forward to and to guide our work. And then we start to get an answer about how. We declare that God's will be done, setting in motion a foundational discipline of reflection that is an opening for personal spiritual growth. And thus, a powerful invocation is given and a powerful prayer is begun. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. So friends, let us pray. Most compassionate life giver, may we honor and praise you. May we work with you to establish your new order of justice, peace, and love. Give us what we need for growth and help us through forgiving others to accept forgiveness. Strengthen us in the time of testing, that we may resist all evil. For all the tenderness, strength, and love are yours, now and forever. Amen. And Divine One, with gratitude and awe we kneel before you, knowing that you are present with us in all of our challenges. And we lift up to you now our prayers, our concerns, our heartaches, our fears, and our joys, knowing that you hear us and that you hold all of our prayers with love. And now, let us pray together the prayer that you taught us in your word. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. And so now we will sing together our closing hymn, number 510, which I will share for you now. Eternal God, grant to us this day and every day such readiness and delight in following you, that whether our lives are short or long, we shall have lived abundantly. Amen. Let us go in peace, friends, and serve the Lord.